One of the projects I've been working on lately is to try to reclaim orphaned canvases that I've collected in my studio. When my paint products are almost empty, I take the remaining paint and spread it out on a canvas before I throw away the tube or spray. Leftover bits of anything might appear on these canvases, and sometimes they're just canvases that for some reason I didn't feel like finishing. They're not ruined, they just need to be reclaimed. I'm adding joint compound to this canvas to create a textural background. Since we're calling this blog hop the Dirty Baker's Dozen blog hop, I thought that I'd use a lot of things from my kitchen cabinets as tools for art tools today. So I'm spreading this joint compound around with my pie server palette knife. The next tool I'm going to use is not really for my kitchen cabinets, but it is a non-traditional to art tool. This hair dye brush is going to come in pretty handy today because I put the joint compound on a little bit too thick in places. I'm brushing down to reclaim some of the eggshell texture in some places and picking up bits of joint compound in others to make little mounds of compound all over the canvas. These little mounds of joint compound will become my abstract roses later. Another sophisticated art tool, just a regular teaspoon, and I use it to manipulate the little mounds of joint compound into roses. I'm just going in circles and around in spirals to make these roses. The handle of the teaspoon comes in pretty handy too. Because joint compound is meant to be used on a hard surface and not on a flexible canvas, a lot of my students worry that it might flake off of the canvas, but I've done this for years and I've never had a problem. My next little sophisticated tool is a pie crust crimper. I love the textures that it makes in this joint compound. I'm finding it really great for making suggestions of little stems or little blades of grass. Honestly, you don't even have to know what you're trying to represent. If you're making textures that look good on the canvas, then that's more than half of the battle. Just learn to play, learn to relax in what you're doing, and you'll not only have more fun, but you'll make a better composition. The sun makes a really good drying tool, and I just laid this on the grass in my front yard for a few hours. If drying too quickly in the sun causes it to crack, well, that's just a bonus texture. These are very inexpensive acrylic craft paints that I've mixed with 1/3 water, 1/3 paint, and 1/3 Liquitex pouring medium. I honestly don't know the scientific background, but I do know that when you add water to paint, that breaks down the molecules of the paint. So I'm thinking that the pouring medium will help put some of those molecules back together so that the paint won't just slide off the canvas. We want it to adhere. Part of the fun of doing these pouring canvases is just seeing what colors appear. I really like the way this looks. Here I'm going to use my fingers to push a little of the paint, especially to the edges of the canvas. I don't mind some of the white areas, although they'll probably fill in once I take it outside and they start running together again. I do want the edges, it to come down on the edges of the canvas. I prefer working with this kind of project in the summertime when I can take it outside to dry. That way I don't blow it around with a hairdryer or use a heat gun. I just let it dry naturally and flow into each other. Look at the marbling in this pan. If I had a piece of paper near me, I would try to lift a marbled print from this. The canvas dried pretty nicely, but the paint is flat, so I'm going to use Silk's acrylic glazes, starting with the color Blue Flame, to give it some shimmer. One of the best qualities of the Silks is that when you layer them one on top of another color, you can see through them to see the other colors. It's like you're looking down through the colors, and maybe they won't be so apparent, but then you keep looking and they appear, kind of like magic, I guess. It really brings out the beauty when you add this shimmer paint to a flat background. Now I'm going to switch to the color Sunburst here, and that pops the roses out even more. It depends on what color you put this over as to what color you'll make. These are especially good because it gives a richness that you just can't get with anything else. You look down through the colors and you can see so many other colors that you've gone on top of, or you've painted under, and yet they don't really disappear. They're just layered in there waiting for your eye to capture. Okay, you see now that I'm going to Lovestruck, which is a reddish color. So actually I've stayed with the same color scheme that I began with my inexpensive craft paints that were very flat. But now I'm giving them the shimmer and the dimension that the color art paints bring in. And so this looks orange because I'm putting it on top of yellow, so most of these are going to end up looking orange, but I'll probably punch it with several layers of this color until I get it to come up to a red. I'll punch these colors all over each other, all over the canvas. Punch may not be the word, layer would be the word. I'm very pleasantly surprised with the way this turned out. The intensity of the colors is just amazing, and it brought out the eggshell background that I already had in there. I've decided to use Radiant Rain Shimmering Mist in the color Pearl Red to make my canvas a little more interesting near the center. Now this color, as I spray it, will settle into the recessed areas of the canvas. I've already covered the entire rest of the canvas with the Silks acrylic glazes, so now I'm only going to spray mostly in the center to give this just a little more shimmer. The product does have a tendency to reactivate all of the products beneath it, so if you tilt the canvas while it's wet, chances are that your colors are going to run. I'm pulling out another Radiant Rain color, but this one's in a dauber form instead of in a mist, and it's called Yellow Rose. Again, you have to shake these products before using because all of the mica is heavier than the liquid and it will settle to the bottom, and you want that mica to show up. I'm going to use this on top of the roses just to bring out some of the textural elements. I'd say it's time for me to proof the dough now. You may have heard me say this in another video. One of my fond memories when I was a kid was walking out the schoolhouse door and smelling yeast rolls baking. I knew when I smelled those that my mom, her sisters, and my grandma were all baking bread that day. They'd stir up huge dish panfuls of bread dough, and then they would set it aside and let it proof. So what we need to do is set our work aside and let it proof. I use some other methods to see if I'm finished. Sometimes I'll take a picture of it and look at it, walk back, or look at my work in a mirror, but proofing the dough seems to be the best way for me to find out if I'm finished or not. And with this one, I didn't feel like I was finished. It needed something else. So I pulled out some Radiant Gel's dimensional paint in olive vine and in key lime colors. I did the same thing with creative paper clay that I do with paint. If I have a little bit left over when I'm making a project, then I push it into a mold. So I have these already molded and ready to go. All I need to do now is just paint these with that Radiant Gel's dimensional paint until I get them the color that will look good on the canvas. You can buy creative paper clay at Michael's and at Hobby Lobby, and it's about $10 a pound, but that pound goes a terrifically long way. So I'm finishing up the painting, and then I start to place it on my canvas to see where I like it to bring out a little more emphasis. Glue these on with a little E6000 glue, and I think we have our dish all done. So Betty Crocker, you can head back to your kitchen.